Thank you
Helle.
very much.
Helle V.
That's true.
And we need the V because...
Because it's the way that we distinguish me from another Helle, who is a colleague, a very good colleague
in the same
of mine.
university.
Same university, same department, same teaching field, and same research group.
Okay.
Okay, lots of coincidences.
So you're the V.
So I'm the V.
Good.
Yeah, I'm the
Okay.
V, and it's not Van Damme, which
Okay.
people sometimes
All right.
call me that.
Which department, which university?
I am in the Department of Business Communication in a faculty, it's called School of Social Sciences, of School of Business and Social Sciences. So it's not humanities at all. And I'm at Aarhus University, Denmark.
Good. Okay.
Yeah.
And Aarhus was a business school that became a university.
Yes,
which explains
exactly.
the business.
Yeah, or in fact, I was in a business school, and then we merged with Aarhus University.
Okay.
So there was a really big merger.
Okay.
Well, that happened all over Denmark. I think I've seen it also in other European countries that smaller university merge. So we are one big university in Aarhus now with lots of small schools.
Good.
Merged into it.
Okay. And what's your position there?
My position is I'm a professor in interpreting and translation. So interpreting first, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And you're training interpreters and translators
Yes.
in your department?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yes, we train interpreters and translators and interpreters. Yes, we do, among others. But also communication. We have communication studies. Well, sort of, it's a broader field. The department is broader than just translation.
Is that good for training?
I think it is. Well, it's good. For one thing, it's good to be in a business school. I think because our students get business modules. We see translation very much as a business more than a sort of a humanities field.
Does that mean they're translating business technical text?
Well, they do
financial
that,
things, or?
but they also have some modules. They have courses in business.
Okay, good.
So yeah, so they are business persons as well as translators and interpreters. So this is that is, I think, a special thing about Denmark, because that's the way it's organized in all of Denmark. Translators and interpreters are trained in business departments or schools. Then, as for the broader field, yeah, I think it's a good thing that they're trained more broadly in communication, intercultural communication, but also just strategic communication.
Your graduates become state authorized translators
they do
and
if
interpreters.
they choose a very specific. So it's not at all our graduates. It's actually a small group of them who take that profile of translating. And
Okay, so it's not that the degree itself has a legal validity.
No, it's not. But then if they do that, if they follow these specific courses in legal translation, in interpreting, in all that, then they have direct access to state authorization.
Okay.
So
Which is the equivalent to sworn translation.
Yes, we could say that. We could say that. Well, they're not actually sworn, but they get a stamp and they can authorize. Yes, they authorize their translations.
Okay, good.
With that stamp. Yes.
Your recent research or recent years has been in the sociology of translators and interpreters.
Yes.
With colleagues. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I can indeed. Yes, I've sort of moved. Did I say that I started out in interpreting?
Okay, we'll work back to it. Let's go back to your mid-20s and what you were doing then, and then we'll come into where you are.
Should we then? Okay. In my mid-20s, what was I doing?
That was the question, yes.
I was being trained, probably sort of finishing my, studying for translator and interpreter. So
you went through the same system?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. I'm actually trained in the same place. Yes.
Okay.
Then I wanted to become was to become an interpreter. I wanted to be a conference interpreter. I wanted to work for the EU That was my plan. But then, that was, well, I don't know, I landed here because of a series of coincidences. But then again, what were we saying?
Did you have a professional practice before going back into the academy?
I had not for years and years. No, actually, I really wanted to go to the EU. I wanted to pursue a career in interpreting. I did interpreting on the side, and I've always done that actually whenever I have time. But it's hot in here. Yeah, what was I saying?
That you were interpreting.
Yes,
so you have a break? You finished your degree and then you continue on?
Then a fellowship, a PhD fellowship came up in interpreting studies, and then I thought, okay, I'll apply for that.
Okay.
So, which I did, and then I pursued a university career, and I never got into the field and worked there for years and years, but I've always interpreted at the side.
So you know of what's happening in the profession?
Yes, indeed.
More or less.
Indeed, yes. Okay. Yes. And I am a trained interpreter and translator.
Okay.
Yes.
And your PhD was on what then?
It was on interpreting as well. Yeah. It was consecutive interpreting. I've done a lot of stuff on note-taking and, but I've also I've worked with community interpreting and also simultaneous interpreting, so interpreting, and then I needed a change. So I started looking into, I became interested in the field of, more in the sociology of translation, and I started looking at the status of translators and interpreters. And I've been doing that for a while together with a colleague, Karen Setsen, also at my department. We published a number of articles on the status of different translators and interpreters over the past years. Right now
These are groundbreaking articles. Can you...
Oh,
I mean, I've learned a lot from them. But what have you found that's been surprising?
It hasn't been surprising, in fact. The status, there's some of but to say, very generally, I haven't been very surprised to find that the outside world's perception of translators is quite low. Translators tend to be disregarded and not respected for what they can and their competences and stuff. But they certainly, that's not very surprising to me. It was interesting to see how they see themselves, the translators and interpreters we talked to, they see themselves as highly skilled professionals. But there seems to be a discrepancy.
And this is in Denmark and in Brussels.
It is, yes.
Where you're fairly well paid. Compared to
we have the system of state authorization. We had the world's first Translators Act, and it's fairly well established.
Translators Act, you mean a law to protect the title?
Yes, exactly. And that also regulates also obligations and ethics and stuff like that. Yeah. So it's fairly well established, and still it was not desperately low. It was sort of respectable, but not very high, not as high as it should be, you could say. I was surprised to see perhaps that the conference interpreters, because we have also done a survey on Danish conference interpreters at the EU, who work full time, and they're really, by lots of people, I think they are highly regarded.
Well paid.
But very well paid, very, very well paid. They are actually, the full group that we looked at are very well paid. So, but still their status is not as high as we could expect. Not even for the conference interpreters, I think.
Yeah, okay.
Or that is how they see themselves.
One of your articles found that women had a high regard for...
that is true. That was a small thing.
Yeah, it's intriguing.
That was a small thing, but it was intriguing, yes, that we're not talking translators and interpreters here, but when we ask other people people who work with translators.
In the workplace, yes.
Yes, in a company, people who are not translators but use translators. The women in that group thought it was a high status profession. The men didn't really.
Yeah, it's intrigued me. And there are more women than men in the body of translators.
Yeah, and more men in the other body.
Okay.
Yeah, so those that we referred to as core employees, people who use translators, who are engineers or lawyers, that group was dominated by men. But the women thought translation was a cool profession, in fact. Yeah, interesting. That is interesting, that's true.
Do you find signs of the status of translators and interpreters improving at all?
No, I don't think so. No, actually, we haven't done anything sort of longitudinal. But when we talk to translators, what they tend to say is that they see a lot of threats out there. They see crowdsourcing, they see technologies, machine translation. They see that as threats to their profession.
Although the amount of translations being done professionally hasn't declined.
That is true, but in Denmark I think that the situation is a bit different because people tend to be very good speakers of English, and they are very good language people, or at least they think they are. So rather than use, for example, interpreting at big conferences, they use English as a lingua franca. So we tend to see, well, there's a stable market for translations out there, of course, also in Denmark, but people tend to think that they can manage in English, and they use English as a lingua franca, very much so. Yes.
What kind of research do you think we should be doing, or would you give some advice to young scholars?
Well, actually, all kinds, I would say. Just that's the easy way out. Sorry, I'll be more specific later. But I think that we have a very fascinating field. What is fascinating about translation studies is that it's linked so directly to a field of practice. And we see all these developments in the field, new technologies, new forms of organization, new practices and concepts coming up. And I think we need to follow these developments, I mean, evidently, clearly. So there's a lot of things to be done about new forms of organization, all the virtual communities that they create.
I mean, the sociological approach is going to give fruit. Do you think that's what we should be doing?
I think we should do that, but I see all approaches as valid, really. I think that is what is most fascinating about translation studies. So if you don't want to do, well, you can do linguistics or cultural studies, or you can have the sociological approach, and I think they're all valid.
Well, now cognitive studies is bringing in.
Which one, sorry?
Cognitive studies, studying the technologies cognitively.
Yes,
I'd love to connect that with the sociology.
Yes, that could be lovely. The cognitive thing has actually for a number of years been very, very popular in interpreting studies. So I think, and also actually the sociology part has been strong for many, many years in interpreting. I think actually in some fields interpreting studies are stronger, or they're first movers. Rather, if you look at the field of translation studies as a whole, I think on the cognitive side and on the studying the profession, the sociological,
they've always been better organized as a profession.
Yes, very much. And then also I think in discussions of methodology, you see a lot of very early discussions of methodology, epistemology and stuff that I see is absent very much in the general field of translation studies. People, when they submit papers, you don't usually see discussions of epistemology and sort of more meta discussions in papers. But I think that discussion's been there from the very beginning in interpreting studies.
So do you see interpreting studies and translation studies as two things or one thing?
No.
And what's the name?
The name is translation studies, and then we have subfields.
Okay.
I think, and one very strong subfield is interpreting studies. So I see it as a whole. I like broad fields, and I think there are so many similarities. It doesn't make sense to insist on, which we did at the beginning. We tried to delimitate, to say, well, we're really different, and interpreting is very different from translation. But in fact, also because we can see in the field of practice, people, they tend to mix the practicing, the professionals out there, they are very often both interpreters and translators. It must be for a reason, really. Okay. But there is, we see like a tendency for people to say that they are not translators, they are transcreators, they are not translators, they are localizers, they are not translators, they are interpreters. So there is, I think we have a problem with the name of translation. I do think that. Okay. Yes, and I think
the answer might be to insist it's a very broad concept.
Yeah. But the thing is, in the field of practice, it doesn't sell.
Yeah, things are fragmenting.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. What I know, I see a nicely unified academic field. But if you go into practice, you see that people they try, the professionals, the practicing people out there, they try and distance themselves. They refer to themselves in all sorts of ways that are not. They talk about themselves not as translators, but as documentation specialists, or localizers, whatever, transcreators, different things. I think we do have a problem. Not us as scholars, but with regard to the field of practice, I think we have a problem with the name of translation.
Okay. Helle, thank you very much.
You're welcome.